Okay. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. Good evening. I'm Council President Glendolyn Thames and co-chair of the Operations Management and Budget Committee. With me on the dais here this evening, I have Majority Leader to my immediate right, Sanchez, and Councilman Gale, Assistant Majority Leader. So just as a run of the agenda, apologies for our tardiness. We will jump right into it. Tonight we have management, budget, and grants, finance, capital improvement projects, and human resources. We've just been joined by my council colleague, Councilwoman Claudine Fox as well, and others will be trickling in momentarily. OMB is up first, so I will yield the floor to you. You'll have 15 to 20 minutes or so to do your presentation, and then after that we will open it up with Q&A. There was some advanced questions that we provided to you, so after you do your presentation you can just jump right into those if you have prepared responses for that, and then any additional questions we'll open it up to my colleagues. So without further ado, Jolita, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Yolita Lazauskas. I'm Acting Director of Office Management, Budget, and Grants.
Can you do me one favor?
Sure.
Can you move the mic closer to you and just make sure?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. I have Joan Beers, Director of Grants, and I have Jeff Holland on my right, Assistant Director. In this presentation, we will be presenting fiscal year 2020 recommended budget, and Jeff Holland will walk you through.
Thank you, Yolita. Sorry. Good afternoon, members of council. Jumping right into it, for management, budget, and grants, our mission and strategic focus is to continue to develop and implement the long-term fiscal sustainability plan for the city of Hartford. That's really bringing together our major areas of operation, administration of the general fund expenses, general fund revenues, moving forward in the 2020 budget with CIP and grants administration. And the next bullets really flow from that. Develop and manage the city's general fund operating budget and capital improvement program. Provide timely and accurate financial reporting and rigorous analysis, aggressively pursue grant opportunities to support administrative priorities, and administer and manage the city's HUD program portfolio, a handful of acronyms there, the CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, ESG is for shelter grants, HPA is housing for folks with AIDS, thank you, Councilman, and the home program is for housing. Next up is our organization chart. The organization is led by the Director of Management and Budget, and Yolita is in that acting role right now. We consist of 16 full-time positions, 13 are general fund, 3 are grant. Walking you through the org chart, as I said, we have a director. We have an administrative staff individual. The budget development group, which I am part of, the team consists of 3 other analytical team members. I would quickly like to take the opportunity to publicly thank them very much for the work that they do. We also have the grants unit, which consists of the manager, Joan, whom you've met, and a team of project managers, analytical and finance folks that work there. The revenue management team is also led by Yolita. She's currently wearing 2 hats. She has the revenue piece and is also serving as the acting director, and there's 2 staff members there. And moving into 2020, CIP and risk management coming into management, budget, and grants. Want to be very clear, you're going to see as we go through the presentation that our department has gone from a head count of 14 to 16. So we are up, but there is no net change to the entire budget because 2 positions from CIP that were in finance are coming from the finance department to our office. So finance goes down to, we go up to, no net change to the bottom line budget. We'll have a little bit more on that as we go. We'll see some dollars associated with that. Our 2019 highlights. We provided detailed monthly financial reporting to the MARB, which is the Municipal Accountability Review Board at the state, the mayor, and the city council. We are pleased to let you know that today that the MARB voted on a resolution on the mayor's recommended budget, and that was passed favorably. So it's sticking with the plan that the city has presented to them. We serve as the main point of contact for the MARB for inquiries, data, and reporting. We have mitigated an $8 million shortfall in the 18 grand list. We manage HUD compliance and administration for the variety of programs that I previously mentioned and all associated federal obligations. We facilitate grant seeking and grant management for city departments and for some external partners as well. And we have created a police private duty application which includes terms and conditions which say that you need all your financial obligations with the city need to be addressed before you're receiving any police services that someone might pay for a private duty job. Next up is our budget comparison, fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. The general fund in 19, our organization was $1 million, 14 positions. This year we are $1.18 million, an increase of approximately $174,000. And again, the primary driver of that is those 2 positions coming over from the finance department. Our grants, this represents the CDBG administration component of the CDBG grant. That has gone from $711,000 to $762,000. An increase of approximately $51,000. That is formulaic from CDBG, so that increase is associated with the increase in overall funds that we've gotten from CDBG planned for 2020. Fiscal year 2020, areas of focus. Continue to adhere to the financial recovery plan as has been provided to the MARB. Continue to ensure that budgetary decisions are equitable, implemented properly and consistently. Continue to communicate information in a clear, useful, and timely manner. Ensure full compliance with MARB requirements. There's a variety of them there, but the big 2 are the reporting. Every month we are reporting up to the MARB on our financial activity, and contracts. Any contracts that with the city that are exceeding $100,000 go before the MARB committee for review. To manage the general fund budget with a goal of closing it in a surplus to slowly build up our organization's fund balance. Conduct processes for the development and adoption of the next 5-year consolidated plan for housing and urban development for various entitlement programs. To manage CIP aggressively and ensure school construction reimbursements are received timely. And continue to maximize revenue collections and seek additional opportunities to improve revenue growth from the city. Thank you. Per Council President's request, move right into the questions that our organization has received and the answers. What is the total number of vacancies and do you plan to fill them? There are 3 vacancies currently in the office. There is a CIP analyst position, the full-time director's position is currently vacant, and there is a budgetary analytic position as well. All 3 positions are planned to be filled. What is the number and dollar value of new grants we've been able to bring in during this fiscal year? As reported in the 20 budget, it is projected by the end of the fiscal year, the city will have brought in 20 new grants totaling an estimated $26 million. How much costs have we shifted from grants to the general fund during this fiscal year? Generally, the terms of grants awarded don't allow any supplanting for us to be able to do that. Grants are offered to us for the purpose of incentivizing us to do more. So in general, our grants unfortunately won't pay for our current activities, but are encouraged us to do services above and beyond what we would normally do in the general fund. Moving on to some questions on revenue. Please break down charges for services. The town and city clerk collects revenues in this category for conveyance taxes and vital statistics. The public safety collects revenues for liquor license fees and some special fire protection services. Public Works collects revenues for scrap metal fees, mattress recycling, and transfer center fees. HHS collects revenue for food operating fees and other inspection fees. And then we also have things for like grave openings and repair and demolition liens. Please break down revenue, money, and property. Revenue collected from investments that are made by the city treasurer's department, income from property owned by the city that we rent out, and income from development properties. What are fines, forfeits, and penalties trending now in this current fiscal year? They are trending in line with our budget of approximately $190,000. Break down other financing sources. Other financing sources is comprised of the corporate contribution from our corporate partners, Downtown North, revenue from the Hartford Parking Authority, and private duty jobs. What are we currently projecting for all the savings moving union and non-union classified employees to high deductible HSA health plans? Where are we currently with implementation? Projected savings are estimated at $3.3 million for fiscal year 2020. The high deductible health plan and health savings accounts are being used now by a majority of our organization's unions, and unclassified folks will be starting it July 1. What is the one thing you wish was included in the budget that is not? Our office fully supports the mayor's recommended budget. Staffing is extremely lean, and our workload that is put on us demands a lot of hours that we are doing. However, we will work to deliver results and to continuously improve our organization, and we really look forward to getting our vacancies filled to be at full staff. What policy recommendations do you have for council that could help you do your job more effectively? For policy recommendations, Council continues to be a great partner in advancing key areas for our organization, fiscal sustainability. So thank you. That concludes the questions, and we'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you for that presentation, and thank you for the responses to the question. A lot of my questions have been asked, so I will cede my time forward to my colleagues, and if something pops up, I'll circle back. So it's open to the floor. Questions? Dr. Deutsch.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. I don't know why I'm the first this time, but I hear starting from one of the last things that you said is the report on the high deductible health plans and HSAs. And I would have guessed first, you'll clarify my confusion, that some of that would have been done in finance department. And even in general about revenue, when I started here at least 100 years ago, it was finance rather than management and budget. Can one of you explain to me why that revenue function was shifted from finance to management and budget, or there's some talk about unifying one department? Can you say a few words about all that?
Sure. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we have 4 business units. We have the general fund expense, general fund revenue, the current grants administration, and then for the ensuing fiscal year, bringing CIP over from finance into our operations. Specifically to your question on the revenue unit, The general fund really has two sides. It has the expense that we are next year planning on spending $573 million odd dollars on the things in the document before you, and we're going to generate $73 million. We're going to strive to generate that same amount of revenue. So really them coming together makes it a whole for the general fund.
Okay. Now, in particular about the HSA, the health savings accounts, who manages that and how is it managed? What's the mechanism for keeping that money when it is extracted, or I should say deducted from the employee's paychecks?
For that, Councilman, I would refer to the HR department who's coming later this evening. They can give you a better answer on that.
Oh, fine.
We reported budgetarily what's there. They do administer it. I know, and I'll say this as a city employee who is going to be moving to this plan. The city has done a nice job of giving information to me as an employee on what those changes are going to be. So I appreciate that, and I know they'll be able to answer that question for you.
Okay, and then this question may also come up later, and so maybe we'll defer. On the mission and strategic focus page, there's accurate financial reporting and rigorous analysis. Now, if there were a concern that some of the healthcare claims are satisfied, let's say I understand it's about 97% are proven to be eligible for that coverage, but let's say 3% are not. Is it appropriate for our internal audit to do and then repeat periodically the audit of eligibility, or is that outsourced? Do you know, or if that's not your realm, then just defer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Audit will be coming to see you soon.
But, okay. And the last question is the financial recovery plan. That was on your first page, I think, or last page. The financial recovery plan we adhere to, and then on the fourth bullet, it says ensure full compliance with MARB requirements, contracts and revenue collections and so on. But when it says full compliance with the MARB requirement, does anyone know if among the MARB requirements or recommendation is a shift from traditional health plan insurance that many people do prefer to the high deductible health plans with HSA? Do any of us know if MARB urges or requires that shift?
I do not. I do not know.
Okay, well, I don't know either. I suspect it, though, to be honest, and we'll ask that question later on about the role of the MARB in these financial matters. Thank you.
Any other questions? Minority Leader?
Thank you. My apologies for coming in a little later, but I do have a couple of questions. You were mentioning at the end of your report on the revenue side. Can you go over that list again, please?
Absolutely. From the Q&A through the chair, through the Q&A? Sure. The first was charges for services. There's the town and city clerk for the conveyance task, transcript of records, and vital statistics. Public safety collects revenues from liquor licenses and for special fire protection services. Public Works collects for scrap metal fees, mattress recycling, and fees associated with the transfer center. And HHS collects revenue from food operator fees, reinspection fees, and for plan review fees. And then there's grave opening fees and for repair and demolition on liens. The next category was revenue from money and property. That is interest that the organization makes on assets that we have, income from property owned by the city and rented out, and income from development properties. Fine, forfeits, and penalties. That was just where we are for this year. Are we online? I don't know if this speaks to your question, but it's online at $190,000 for this year. And lastly, breakdown for other financing sources. That is the corporate contribution, the $10 million from the insurance companies that they are generously providing, the Downtown North, the HPA, and private jobs that we get.
Okay, thank you. For one of the slides here on page 6, maximizing the collection of current and delinquent municipal taxes, can we receive a list of the highest standing delinquent taxes?
That would be, the finance department will be presenting today, so that can be inquired and sent it from tax office.
Okay, thank you. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So one final thought, because again, a lot of the questions that I had have been answered. Just would want to hear any feedback, observation, comments that were shared, given that the MARB passed the mayor's recommended budget this morning, that you would like to share with us.
Actually, we did have a very short time to present it. However, we did have a kickoff meeting on Monday, and we talked through our assumptions. And I think the biggest concern was about the grant list growth. And we're going to try to find other ways to increase revenues going forward. So, and other than that,
Can you,
there
I'm
was-
sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. Can you
Okay.
just repeat that again, please?
Okay. There was no concern to the budget. However, there was conversation about increasing revenues, and the growth of grant list, that it seems to be kind of a difficult option, and so we're looking at other ways to increase our revenues. There was no other concerns about the budget.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you guys coming in and for your, one follow-up. Dr. Deutsch?
Thank you. That's what you just said is very interesting and crucial about revenue and the adoption. I assume that the MARB understood that that was a recommended budget, and my question is anyone's opinion as to whether, if council deliberates and changes it up, down, or within it, should we anticipate that we're not wasting our time because the MARB would then likely approve that?
Well, the budget was passed and approved.
What's that?
The budget was, the assumptions and the budget was approved by MARB today.
That's what I meant. So among the
It's going forward. The conversation we will be having going forward the following years, not for fiscal year 2020, but going forward.
yeah. And am I right that among the discussion was not selling more real property to
No,
raise money?
that wasn't that was, we're just gonna have some subcommittees meeting with the MARB members and discussing our opportunities.
Right, so we're not going to sell another parking garage or
That
something like
wasn't, no, that wasn't an
Okay.
option.
Thank you, okay.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. I think that's it. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next,
Thank
we
you.
have finance.
awkward. But it's like where the microphone goes. No, it's fine.
She knows what I think about this. I did find the email, I think.
You did?
Sent it to you. Yeah.
Oh, good. I couldn't find it for the.
So I think we're ready when you're ready.
Okay.
Everyone, we're going to start. So good evening. Again, you have the floor, Leanne, to do your presentation. And I know we sent some advanced questions, so you can go right into those, prepare responses if you've done that, and then we'll open it up for Q&A for any additional questions. Thank you. Yeah, we're having the mics, that mic is challenged.
Is this better?
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you.
They didn't teach me this in college. Thank you,
Speak with your
Council.
diaphragm, right?
Right. I wanted to thank Council for inviting the Finance Department here today to discuss our fiscal 20 budget. With me, I have several of my division heads. John Phillip, Division Head for Tax Assessment. Tax Collector Division Head, Nancy Raish, to my right. And to my left is the City Controller, Kim Compagna. So the mission for the Finance Department is pretty consistent with last year. We want to ensure that there's fiscal integrity in all reporting of the city's assets and resources. We want to provide timely reporting under the guidelines of GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. We want to provide quality services and support to our internal customers, which are other departments and employees, and our external customers, all of the taxpayers of the city and residents of the city. We want to do that through efficient and effective use of sound business principles. We want to ensure that we are in compliance with all city, state, and federal purchasing, contracting, reporting, accounting, tax guidelines, mandates. And we want to promote fair and equal treatment of all people that live and work and play in our capital city. And above all, we want to dedicate ourselves to excellent customer service. The structure of the Finance Department starts with me in administration. We have 5 different divisions. You'll see that there's one division missing this year, which is risk. That has moved to management and budget. You heard Jeff give the presentation earlier about that transfer. But it leaves us with, starting from the left, procurement, which has a total of 5 employees. The Tax Assessor's Office, which has a total of 9 employees. Human Relations, which is a combination of admin support for boards and commissions and contract compliance, and that has a total of 6 employees. The Tax Collector's Office, which has a total of 9 employees. And then Accounting and Control, which consists of our pre-audit division, our payroll division, and our accounting division, and they have 14 employees. I want to take a moment to thank all of the employees of the Finance Department because I ask a lot of them every day, and they deliver consistently with great quality work. So I want to thank them for doing such a great job. As I mentioned earlier, the Finance Department has a lot of legal mandates, and it's structured around assessing taxes, collecting taxes, the type of reporting that we need to prepare under very strict guidelines, regulatory reports to the federal government, to the state, reports that are due to the mayor and the council. We have multiple reporting guidelines and legal mandates that we follow. Next. Thank you. In fiscal 19, I wanted to highlight some of our accomplishments. For the second time in 10 years, we timely submitted the city's CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, to the state. So that report is due by December 31st. We filed it on December 22nd. We've also applied for the 2018 Certificate of Achievement Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting, and we've consistently gotten that consistently gotten that award since I've been with the city since 2006. In the finance department, we've also created the living wage report. The first report went to council for results of the 2017 fiscal year living wage report, and I will shortly be releasing the results of the fiscal 2018 living wage report. We have also created for the first time a report on closed contracts that were subject to the Hartford Affirmative Action Plan. That report is it's just being proofed right now, and I will be releasing it to council and to the mayor shortly. And then you have been receiving quarterly updates on the status of our boards and commissions, and I will shortly be releasing the first quarter report for boards and commission status. On the procurement side, we came up with a creative way to effectively use Munis, and we improved our workflow and our contract routing process. We've experienced some issues with locating hard copies of contracts through the routing process. And using Munis, we were able to effectively change the process so that we know exactly where the hard copy is at all times, and at the same time, an electronic copy is going through the review process with all the departments, so there's no holdup waiting on hard copies of the contracts. And that we did just for CIP only, and we are working on new methodology to see if we can roll it out for all contracts. On the tax office, in conjunction with the Treasury Department, we implemented Invoice Cloud, which is our new online collection service. That went live on November 1st of 2018, and we've seen from that implementation a 38% increase in online collections to date. So from July of 2018 through April of 2019, 38%. In response to resident feedback, we've created and implemented a phone tree in the tax office. So we've received lots of complaints about the tax office not having the chance to respond to messages that were left or just answering the phones in general. So working with MHIS, both Nancy and John were able to create a listing of their most frequently asked questions. And then we created a phone tree so that when a taxpayer calls with a tax question, they are directed to the right office, because that is constantly an issue that we face with Nancy and John. Is it an assessor question or is it a collector question? So by creating these frequently asked questions, the taxpayer now has the opportunity to choose what their issue is and then be directed directly to the staff expert. So it goes directly to their phone line, and they're answering that phone call all day. Also, in tax assessor's office, we've settled 241 lawsuits for the 2016 and the 2017 grand list. We still have a small inventory of lawsuits to get through, but we are definitely making progress there. We've also been able to implement a personal property audit process in the assessor's office. John and his staff have mailed out 48 personal property audit letters and are undergoing the audit process for those 48 taxpayers. Some will be in compliance, some will owe the city additional tax dollars. On the collector side, Nancy was able to hold a fee relief program for personal property taxes. And this program started in October, and it ran October through December, where the collection agency fee was eliminated, and we were able to generate $2.3 million in additional collections on personal property taxes through that program. Also in Nancy's shop, we were able to hold our first tax deed sale. This sale happened last Friday at the Hartford Public Library. And it consisted of vacant properties, delinquent vacant properties throughout the city, many of them blighted. And it was a pretty successful sale. We had a very good turnout. We were able to sell 11 properties, and one taxpayer came in and redeemed before that sale. And then another goal of both sides of the tax office is to work on just the personal property tax process. Nancy on the collection of these personal property tax receivables. Her staff was able to mail out 735 demand letters, sorry. And those demand letters brought the taxpayer into the office or had them call into the office and speak directly with Nancy and with John, and it generated conversation as to why they were delinquent and what the problem is and what we could do to resolve their issues. So we had a pretty successful year in finance. Our strategic initiatives for 2020 is in procurement. We will continue to focus on reducing processing time from a department's request for response, or an RFR, sometimes called an RFP, to the purchase order issuance. So when departments need services, sometimes it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months to start an RFP process all the way up through contract negotiations and signature. So we'd like to work on reducing that process as much as possible. We'd like to continue to maximize our collection of current and delinquent taxes while improving customer service. We know that the tax office took quite a hit in 2016, and we've been working hard to restructure and provide stronger services for our taxpayers. In human relations, for contract compliance, we are working diligently with Corporation Counsel, and we're working on our contract monitoring process and our compliance with the code, and we're looking for Corporation Counsel to help us create some stronger language so that we can go out and effectively manage these contracts. And we're also, on the contract compliance side, looking for creative ways to work with the contractors to incentivize them to adhere to the city's HAP program versus penalizing them for non-compliance. The penalizing hasn't been very effective in the last few years, and we want to be able to create a program that's useful and beneficial to the city of Hartford, to the contractors of the city of Hartford. In accounting, we are continuing to work on our current operational efficiencies. So one of the ways that we're doing this in 19, starting in 19, moving into 20, is we are implementing a new time and attendance software. So our current time and attendance software does not talk to Munis, and that creates a problem not only for us in payroll, but in the departments as well, when employees are not sure on what their accrual balances are, how much vacation or sick time that they have left, but it also creates issues on the HR side. So updating and implementing this software, which does talk to Munis, will solve problems not only for finance and HR, but for the departments as well. And then on the accounting side, again, Kim and I work closely with the internal audit department. We meet with them bi-weekly, and we discuss old internal audits that were issued and how we can work with the departments to clear up any outstanding items that haven't been addressed yet by the departments. Some of the issues on these reports deal with internal controls and segregation of duties and, DPW or HHS, that's not on that's not the first thing on their mind when they are operating their department. So it's something that accountants are very acute and very aware of. So it's easier for Kim and I to come in and make recommendations to them that will help strengthen the controls in their department. So our FY20 budget request is $3,892,770, and it is a $125,000 reduction from FY19. A majority of that reduction does revolve around the 2 positions that were transferred to M&B. So some of the areas of focus for us for FY20 is to complete the implementation of ExecuTime, which is the new time and attendance software that I mentioned earlier on the accounting side. Both Nancy and John have a major upgrade planned for the fall of 2019 for Quality Data Services, which is our tax software. We are going to continue to promote the use of Invoice Cloud. Currently, we have a little over 1,100 registered users throughout the city. And again, that generated the 38% increase in online payments made for the tax office. So we're hoping to keep that momentum going and get more users registered and more people using online services as it helps reduce the lines here in the office. We're going to continue the review of the personal property tax process on both assessment and collection. And one of the projects that we started in FY19 that we'd like to finish up in FY20, it's on the agenda, is to finish updating or creating any new procedures for all divisions. So any major processes that we follow, we'd like to have documented. A lot of the procedures are already done, but the issue is when you have a major upgrade to software, they all have to be redone. So it's a matter of staying on top of the current procedures and if there's any new processes that come up to create new written procedures for those. And then Kim and I had started in FY19 a review and update of all financial related policies. In February, we were able to get an updated travel and employee reimbursement policy signed into action. We currently have a draft of the P-card policy, and that is going to start the review process shortly. And we work in tandem with all departments when it comes to updating these policies. We make sure we get input from our major partners like Treasury, Internal Audit, Corporation Counsel, so that there's more than just our eyes on that policy. Moving on to the pre-submitted questions. Are there any vacations? I'm sorry, vacations on my mind. Are there any vacancies you plan to fill, and if so, how many? So we have 2 vacancies in accounting and control right now. Both are due to retirements. And both of those positions are in the interview stage, so hopefully they will be filled by the end of May. There is 1 vacancy in procurement for a buyer who recently transferred to another department, and we will start that replacement process within the next month or so. We recently hired another buyer. She's been with the city for about 2 months, so we want to complete her training before we bring on somebody new. What is the effective tax rate for FY20 for residential property? Is there an increase in the assessment ratio for FY20 that will increase taxes for residents? So the effective tax rate for FY20 for residential is 2.6%. And for FY20, the assessment ratio increased to 35%, overall an increase of 3.5% over fiscal 19. What is the projected revenue from the recent tax deed sale? So we had, as I mentioned earlier, 1 property that redeemed and 11 vacant properties that were sold at the tax deed sale. Net revenue to the city after legal fees was $420,000. Within this budget, is there any consideration to ensure that we have adequate staffing and hours of operation for the tax office? What are the new methods being implemented for residents to pay taxes without coming to the office? So we didn't build in any consideration for tax in FY20, but we did make changes in FY19 to the tax collection office. We added an additional position for an administrative staff whose sole responsibility will be to answer phones. So this person will be taking all the phone calls that don't go to a subject matter expert through the phone tree. Nancy and I worked hard on restructuring her office so that the reporting structure flows a little bit better, gives her more ability to work with the taxpayers. We have not changed any of the tax hours of operation. And the methods that are being implemented for residents to pay taxes without coming into the office really stem from the implementation of Invoice Cloud. So now through Invoice Cloud, a taxpayer can pay their taxes online. They can pay over the phone. They can download a mobile app to their cell phone and pay their taxes through the app. Also through the app, they can set up automatic payments, and you can say, I would like to pay my taxes on July 1st and January 1st and have that automatically withdraw from their accounts. They can also set up recurring payments, so if a taxpayer cannot afford to pay their full taxes due at the beginning of the month, they can say, I'll pay $100 a week or any set dollar amount every week until their taxes are paid in full. So the implementation of Invoice Cloud has really given the taxpayer more options than coming into the office. There was a 2013-2014 tax task force, and they put forth a set of recommendations. What recommendations have been implemented? And if there are recommendations that have not been implemented, why haven't they been? So we were just able to locate this 2013-2014 tax task force report today. So I have not had the ability to sit down with John and Nancy and review the recommendations that were in that report, but we will be doing that in the near future, and I will respond to this question in writing when we are able to look through that report and see what's been done. It may require additional research because I do know that some of those recommendations were legislative in nature, so we'll have to see what items were brought forth to the legislation and what happened to them once they got there. So that's going to take a little time to do some research, but I will respond to that question in writing. What is the one thing you wish was included in the budget that is not? So I did not make this request when I did submit my budget to Mayor Bronin, but in speaking with both John and Nancy, the tax office is still a little short-staffed. So one more position in each division would be very beneficial. Right now, John still sits out in front and sometimes deals with walk-in taxpayers who have issues. Nancy has difficulty with cashiering when cashiers call out. We do use temporary help during busy collection times, but having a permanent third cashier would be beneficial for the office. What policy recommendations do you have for council that could help you do your job more effectively? I don't really have any policy recommendations for finance, but we do have a plan to update the procurement code. The procurement manager, Tara Washington, is currently working with Corporation Counsel to draft those changes, so any help on getting those changes implemented would be truly appreciated. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate your responses to those questions. Again, most of my questions have already been asked, so I'm going to yield my time forward to my colleagues. Councilman Clark.
Thank you. Through you, Madam President. Mr. Phillips, regarding the tax deed, not tax deed sale, the actual settlements regarding the tax assessors list, how much did that shrink our grant list?
It was a 1.17% drop, roughly $40 million in assessment dollars, roughly $3 million in revenue.
1.17%, and you said $40 million decrease?
Right.
Okay. So how will that affect?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. If the question was how much did the tax appeals go down, push it down, it's probably about half of that. That was the overall drop in the list.
So we're set to do another assessment, correct?
For the October 2021 list.
So how will that affect the upcoming assessment?
It's too early to tell.
Okay. Regarding those settlements that took place, was there any indication as to why the city lost? Or did we not lose altogether? There was some type of happy medium that was founded by the courts.
So most of them were negotiated in pre-trials that never went to trial. We did try one and we lost outright. We tried another and we're awaiting decision on that. All of the rest, we negotiated settlements. Some of them, I was pretty happy with. Others I wasn't, but we don't really get a fair shake in the court. No town does. It's the way the system works.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Deutsch?
Hi, y'all. Thanks for being here, and I appreciate the thorough presentation, like really thorough. It was great. I just have one question about your wish that didn't enter the budget that you submitted. What is the cost of the additional body for the tax assessor's office? Like, what is the baseline salary for that?
So it depends. It depends on which position we're filling. Both John and Nancy are looking for an administrative type position. So for John, maybe $40,000 before benefits. And for Nancy, it would be a cashier and around the same pay scale.
Thank you.
Thank you, and again, thanks for being here. Sometimes we in the city, if it's felt by the administration that we can get a certain service performed by outsourcing it, and finance is involved with compliance issues, is there any way that we check when we outsource to a company either outside the city or outside the state, check compliance with policies of that outsourced company? For instance, let's say they have racist or sexist policies within that company, or some kind of practices, religious discrimination, whatever, or unfair hiring that we may not agree with, but yet they may not, as a company, who monitors the attitudes and policies of the companies to which we outsource?
Thank you, Councilman, for your question. So if I understand correctly, you're asking who monitors outside vendors that we contract with. And my response to you would be through the RFP process, there's an RFP review committee, and that review committee typically consists of departments that would be affected by the service. So if it's auditing services for the city, finance might be involved, treasury might be involved, council could be involved. So a review committee is is created to review all of the responses to the RFP. And through the RFP review process and gathering all those different opinions and using a rating system to generate who would be the best respondent to provide that service, I would think that's the only way that we could really get to what you're asking is that process.
Well, okay, if I could pursue it a minute. Supposing, let's say, we contract with a company that checks off all the right boxes, that we hire with equal opportunity, we pay decent wages, compliance with minimum wage, let's say, wherever it is, or that we or follow up on a tax fixing agreement, let's say. We've been through this before, and they check all, they say, we will hire 20% Hartford residents. Or they say, we don't have any of those, let's say, nasty policies against individuals. Other than seeing a check box, do we have any way, it's not simple, of actually visiting the site or asking employees if indeed they're not discriminated against?
Okay, so that type of work is done through our contracts compliance unit. And we do have one person whose main responsibility is to go out and inspect the job sites. So they go out on the job sites, they make sure that the proper EEO posters are up and noticeable for all employees to see. They go through and they interview the employees, and they make sure that employees that the contractor or the subcontractor say are Hartford residents, they ask to see identification, or they speak directly to the employee to confirm that they are Hartford residents. They go through and make sure that they're working for the appropriate company. So if Leanne Rawls Contracting has 2 subs on site, they make sure that the employee works for the right company and it's not a sub that the city is unaware of on the job site. So that person goes out and does these interviews. And then we have 2 project managers on staff, and the contractors have to submit to the city through our software called LCP Tracker their certified payrolls. And also they have demographic information on their employees. So the contract compliance unit cross-references the interviews that are done on site with the information that is entered into LCP Tracker.
And so, just wrap. Is that person Eloy Topin? And second part, do you think we have enough staff to actually go out and check on some of these outsourced employers and companies? Do we have enough?
So there are 2 staff, Eloy Topin and Diana Maldonado, both are project managers for contract compliance. They each have an administrative assistant who helps them manage all of the information that comes in for their contracts. And with the decline in CIP activity, now that the mayor has streamlined capital projects throughout the city, the number of contracts that are being managed has decreased over prior years. So now it's at an appropriate workload for both Diane and Eloy to manage. So I think we're staffed appropriately for contract compliance.
Okay, thank you. I think that'll do. Thank you.
Minority Leader.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work for all of us in the entire city and the residents. So my question is more for Mr. Phillips on page 6. Can we get a list of who the major culprits are of the delinquent municipal taxes?
Yeah, it's okay.
Or Nancy?
We can get you a list, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council Majority Leader and then Assistant Majority Leader.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation and your hard work. My question is about the positions. You said there's 4 positions that you would like to fill, correct? 1 per department.
So the 3 vacancies.
Oh, 3.
Yep.
No, but if you were to, right, so if you was to hire to be a cashier and 1 person for the assessor's office?
My wish list would be yes, one cashier and one admin clerk.
So it's two. All right, so I thought you said 4. Okay, so which position will actually, if hired, will actually help increase the revenue that would cover the extra cost for the employee hiring, but also include the revenue for the city?
So neither position would increase revenues. In FY19, we were able to add another position to the assessor's office, and this position is a field rep position, so it's another set of feet on the streets. That person may result in additional tax dollars for the city. The admin clerk would be someone to handle walk-ins and the mountains of paperwork that are sent in for people who have sold their vehicle and got a tax bill or need some type of adjustment made to their tax assessment on John's side. As of today, John, you'll frequently walk into the tax assessor's office and see John at the front desk handling walk-ins. For Nancy's side, it's a cashier. So we have 2 full-time cashiers in the tax office, and if someone takes vacation, then she's down to 1, and we have to figure out rotation and proper coverage for the cash cage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to talk about the condo loophole for a minute. And just to give a little background, make sure I have an understanding of it, it was the situation that condominium units were receiving the residential tax assessment ratio, which I understand this year is 35%. And there was a desire, I know on the part of myself and therefore on the part of the city of Hartford, to close the condo loophole, as we called it, by saying that if you owned more than 4 condo units in common, that you would then be paying the same rate that a multifamily residential property would pay, which is assessment ratio of 70%. And my understanding is that because because of this condo loophole, we had apartment complexes with 20, 30, 40, 50 units who were converting to condominiums so as to take advantage. They would buy the property knowing that their taxes were at the 70% assessment ratio and then convert the property into condominiums, never intending to sell a condominium unit, but by virtue of converting, they were able to essentially almost cut their taxes in half. So we went to the legislature last year to attempt to rectify that situation in some fashion, and I believe that we have, going forward in time, new apartment complexes will not be able to become a condominium and take advantage. But there was some grandfathering that allowed all existing condominiums up to that point in time to continue to benefit from the residential assessment ratio. My understanding is that this costs the city a lot of money. And so if you could just speak to that for a minute.
You summed it up very accurately. I mean, that is exactly what happened, and it was probably the second largest component of the drop in the list this year, and it is essentially over except for properties that invest significantly in improvement after sale going forward.
And how much did that cost the city?
I think roughly 15 million. Well, it was close to half of that 40 million assessment drop. So in the neighborhood of, where were we? Yeah, between $1 million and $1.5 million in taxes.
In taxes. Now, is there the ability, and this is, I'm asking you of your understanding of the legislation, is there the ability for the city now to go back to the legislature and say, no, we want all of these condo units, if they're single ownership in one building, they have to be taxed the same as as an apartment house?
I mean, I don't think there's any restriction from going back and asking, but I'd be willing to bet they're sick of hearing about it at the Capitol.
Fair enough, thank you. On the tax sale that just occurred, did I understand that there were 41 properties that were on the list, but only 11 actually sold at the sale?
That's right. It was an auction, and only 11 properties were there people who actually bid.
And you had to bid at least, your starting bid had to be the amount of taxes owed.
It had to be the amount of taxes owed unless the city decided to auction it for less, and when that was the case for all of the properties that sold. Well, for most of them.
I'm sorry, for all the properties that sold, we started less?
We started at less, I'd say 8 of the 11.
Last question on that. Was the Colonial Theater one of the properties that sold?
No, the Colonial Theater was one of the properties that the city postponed the sale.
Postponed the sale?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can you send us the list of the 11 properties that did sell?
Sure, yes.
And the non-sold property. Or actually, 3 things, I guess, on the list. The ones that the city withdrew, the ones that sold, and then the ones that didn't sell.
I will give you a list of the whole tax detail.
Thank you. Last question, if I may. There's a line item in your budget for boards and commissions. And as I'm looking at it, it appears that it's $13,500 request for this year. Can you tell us what is that money used for? How is that money accessed?
Okay, so that $13,500 is split between contract compliance and boards and commissions, and it's approximately $8,000 to $9,000 is geared towards boards and commissions. And under the city charter, the Civilian Police Review Board mandates that the board member has to be trained before they can sit on the board and start participating in the decision-making. So depending on how many new board members come on, the training's roughly $1,500. So if we have 3 board members coming on at the same time, we'll try and train them all together for the total of $1,500. But if they are scattered throughout the year, then we have to have the ability to pay that $1,500 for each member who needs training.
And if you know, is there staff assigned to each board and commission?
So the finance department only provides administrative support to 5 boards and commissions, and it's 1 staff person.
Which 5?
It's Civilian Police Review Board, it's Human Relations. Oh, now you're really testing me. It's disabilities. It's LGBTQ+, and I believe it's permanent status of women.
And is that pursuant to ordinance, if you know?
I'm sorry?
Is that pursuant to ordinance, if you know?
I'm not sure where it stems from. The finance department absorbed the Human Relations Division in 2018. So it used to be part of the Human Relations Office way back in the day. That was broken up. Part of it went to HR, part of it went to Corporation Counsel. So I can't really speak to the history of why just the 5.
Thank you.
That's in your budget, though. Yeah.
Minority Leader and then Dr. Deutsch.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question in reference to the commissions, the boards and commissions. Are there funds that are set aside for specific boards and commissions?
Other than that $9,000, which could be used if Civilian Police Review Board didn't have to train members on the other 5, could be used on the other 4 boards. So it's there, it's available.
So that could be distributed for the other boards that you've mentioned here tonight? Could
Yeah,
be.
the 5 in finance, yes.
Are there any other funds for commissions beyond those that you've listed here?
We have in John's part of the budget some money for the Board of Assessment Appeals, but other than that, in the finance budget, there's no other funding for any other board or commission.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask this again also? You said one of the functions in finance is keeping hard copies of contracts or maybe scanning them or something of that sort. So supposing, is that the case for all contracts, so that any contract which a city council member or anyone wants to see can be retrieved without exception? Is that right, as legal documents?
So in fiscal 18, we contracted with a vendor to create a contract warehouse for us. So any contract that is a result of a purchase order, we have in that contract warehouse. We have anything signed for FY18 and FY19. Prior to that, if there was a contract that resulted in a purchase order, we most likely have that contract scanned in Munis.
I see. But supposing it's not for a purchase order per se, or maybe it is. Let's say it's another outsourced function, like let's say an auditing function that we outsource to another company, either here in Hartford or California or anywhere else. Would we have copies of those contracts to review?
So that audit function would go through the RFP process, but if it's something like a lease agreement that doesn't result in a purchase order, then the procurement office would not have a copy of that.
So who would have a copy?
My best guess would be Corporation Counsel, but you could confirm with them.
Okay, I'm just worried that in some instances, we might not have access to an original contract if, let's say, we're worried about compliance with it or just want to read it for historical purposes. There should be some way to find such a contract for any of us to read. And going back, how far would you say that might be the case?
Probably 2013 to be attached in Munis, 2012, 2013. Anything signed as far back as that resulted in a purchase order would be in Munis. In the contract warehouse, it's FY18 and FY19.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah.
So what would happen, supposing there were a contract from 2010 or 1995?
So prior to 2012, 2013, when we started scanning documents into Munis, the city had a separate data warehouse called OnBase. So we still have access to check to see if that contract's in OnBase. Procurement had a section on the network, a drive where they were saving contracts. So we have multiple places to check to see if we could find an older contract.
And who would do that? Let's say, last question, supposing, let's say a person on first pass couldn't find a contract, who would be sort of in charge of searching for it? Would it be Corp Counsel or Finance or what?
Most likely the request would go out to all departments, but I would start in procurement.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think that concludes our time with you this evening. Thank you. We look forward to the follow-up with those outstanding items. At this moment, we're going to take a brief recess. We'll come back. We are ahead of schedule. We'll come back at 6:45. Thank you. And next up is Capital Improvement Program.
Thank you.
Good evening. We are resuming our Department of Budget hearings, and we have with us Tomac and Jolita, for the do CIP. So thank you very much, and please proceed.
Thank you, and hello, thank you, City Council. I'm Tomac Furtak. I'm the Administrative Operations Manager for the city's Risk and Capital Improvement Programs. My position is housed within Operations, Management, Budget, and Grants. It's my pleasure to present the city's capital improvement program for fiscal years 20 through 24. This first slide here is meant to demonstrate the scale of the city's infrastructure and what the CIP aims to maintain and improve. We have an extensive levee system that includes pump stations, water conduits, and 7 miles of physical levees, 216 centerline miles of roadways. We also have 2,100 pavement marking symbols, 391 miles of pavement markings, 19,000 street signs, 13,400 signposts, 1,400 crosswalks, 3,700 sidewalk ramps, 12 city-owned bridges, and 1 pedestrian bridge, and 55 municipal facilities, including parks, 39 schools, and 167 non-facility related properties. This is our status update here for the capital improvement program. In this past year, in fiscal 19, we shifted to funding capital projects exclusively from the general fund and grant reimbursements only, our first true pay-go CapEx year. Our tight budget limits our ability to fund all the projects that we would like, and every year more projects are submitted than we can support. We have, in this past year and over the last year and a half, continued to limit our capital improvement program, and we must continue this trend going forward. We're going to continue to be persistent in obtaining old school construction reimbursements and other reimbursements from other grant programs. And we do not plan any new debt issuances. We did not plan any in fiscal 17 or 19, and we don't plan any new debt issuances, in the near future. This year, for our CIP guidelines, we mirrored the guidelines that we used in the FY19 CIP process, and then we added on one additional guideline. What we asked the departments to do when they submitted their projects this year was take into consideration investments that preserve the city's existing capital assets, projects that are necessary to promote growth within the city, including revenue growth, items of criticality and those that present a material risk, items that are essential to governmental functions or enhancements to the quality of life for our residents. We asked them to prioritize projects for health and safety. And then the new guideline for this year that we gave to the departments, we asked them to try and be as consistent as they could with the submissions that they had provided for us last year. This year, CIP projects, for the highlights for CIP projects, the critical infrastructure projects include citywide ADA compliance, portions for milling and paving, sidewalk replacement, traffic signal improvements, flood control, bridge repairs, and public safety equipment. Our top lines this year for the fiscal 20 CIP is that it utilizes existing authorizations for projects currently underway or planned for fiscal 20. Of the total authorizations requested for fiscal 20, which is $24.4 million, approximately $9 million of that authorization addresses the increase in Weaver High School. The net new authorizations that we are requesting this year, excluding the Weaver High School $9 million, will total $15.4 million. The city's proposed CIP net cash flow totals $32.5 million. Of this, $14.2 million is planned for the final expenses for Weaver High School. Projects in our CIP are subject to available funding. Our out-year forecasts may be reduced as funding adequacy is confirmed. And what the CIP here for fiscal 20 represents is a continued focus on maintaining a lean capital improvement program, and it continues to demonstrate ongoing fiscal prudence. The following slides show what the fiscal 20 CIP looks like. This next slide outlines our public safety and public works CIP programs. I won't go through each one of them line by line, but I can certainly answer questions on any individual project included in them. The next slide outlines our park and recreation as well as our development programs. And then the final slide includes our plan for educational facilities that are contained within the capital improvement program. This final slide gives you a total overview of the net cash flow broken out by the 5 sections of our CIP program, along with what we are asking for fiscal 20 and authorizations, and what we project we may need in fiscal 21 through 24 for authorizations. There were questions that were submitted prior to today. I'm going to read through those questions and my responses. The first question is, how are we prioritizing CIP projects? During project submission, each department is asked to prioritize each project by providing a rank order and are asked to meet an essential capital need within the following categories: streets and infrastructure, school buildings, city buildings, parks, levees, and public safety structures and equipment. The next question is, what was the rationale to what is being proposed? Guidelines are provided during the CIP submission process. Each department is asked to submit projects that take into consideration the following guidelines. It was a slide, but I will go through those guidelines here again. It's investments that preserve the city's capital assets, projects that are necessary to promote growth, including development and revenue growth, items of criticality and those that present material risk, projects that are essential to governmental functions or enhancements to quality of life, projects that prioritize health and safety, and projects that are consistent with the prior year CIP plan. The next question was, are all of these proposals, particularly for this year, essential? Each year, more projects are submitted than we're able to support. The projects that have been included in this year's CIP are only those that have been selected after going through the CIP vetting process. The next question is, what funds from the Parks Trust Fund can be used for proposed projects within the parks? No CIP funds are allocated for projects within the parks. Projects within the parks are funded through the Parks Trust Fund exclusively. How many departments have operating positions charged to CIP? One department, Public Works, has 2 positions with overtime that is being charged to CIP. These positions are both electricians who have been using overtime to perform streetlight conversions to LED, activities related to an energy grant administered through the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. By having our employees perform the conversion work instead of contractors, we're able to reduce costs to the project and increase the amount of work that can be performed, and this work has been approved and allowed by the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. Who is the city representative to monitor school construction projects? Frank Delaripa from the Department of Public Works and myself monitor school construction projects for the city. Frank monitors these projects from a construction management and engineering perspective, while I monitor them from a financial perspective. Frank reports to the Department of Public Works, and I report to the Director of OMBG. How many projects are there that have been approved but funds have not been spent? In the FY19 CIP program, there are currently 21 projects that have been approved without funds having been spent. This number is anticipated to decline as we enter spring construction seasons. Some projects simply haven't had expenses incurred yet because they haven't kicked off, but they will be kicking off in the spring construction season. Has there been any reallocation of projects? If so, what are they and what is the dollar amount? Yes, there have been 2 reallocations of projects in the FY19 CIP. The first project is emergency demolition, a development project that required $400,000 in addition to the planned budget of $100,000 to cover expenses related to a large unplanned demolition. Funds from the state and federal matching project within the development section were used to meet this need. The second project is the fire alarm and emergency lighting improvements being conducted here at City Hall. This project was originally conceived as a 2-year project totaling $1.6 million, with $800,000 in expenses occurring in each year. An opportunity to complete the work in 1 year at a cost of $1.2 million was presented to the city, and authorized spending within the municipal facilities renovation was used to cover the increased expenses, which totaled $400,000. By doing this, the city was able to capture a $400,000 overall savings from the original project. Are there any projects that have been closed out with balances? Yes. In fiscal year 18, there was a thorough review performed by the city's CIP team, led by the former CFO and in conjunction with bond counsel. Any project that was completed and had excess bond proceeds had these proceeds reallocated to another council-approved CIP project that needed additional funding. This process allowed finance to close up many older projects and clean up the active CIP project listing. There were 122 projects with unexpended balances closed following this process in fiscal year 19. It was accounting housekeeping work.
Thank you, sir. Just have a couple of questions, and then I will ask my other colleagues who have questions to, by all means, offer them up. In your presentation under the CIP distribution for educational facilities, what can, if you aren't, could you provide this to me? What are the items for the $9 million that are being allocated for Weaver?
I don't have a specific listing for what the items will be covered for that $9 million, but I can get that to you.
Okay, please do. Thank you. And how much are we expected to still receive from the state for the school construction reimbursements?
For which project in particular?
For overall,
For all of them?
Yeah.
So we expect to achieve a 95% reimbursement rate for,
No. For how much are we expected to recoup from the state that we have not received monies from for reimbursement?
for old school, for
yes.
old school construction
Yes.
projects. We're in the process of evaluating that right now, but I can get that number to you.
Okay, okay. And regarding the milling and paving, the budgeted amount, how many streets will fall under that amount?
A list of those streets has been prepared by the Department of Public Works, and I can provide that to you.
Okay, thank you. Any of my colleagues want to have a question for Tomek? Councilman Gale?
Yes, thank you. You have the budget book in front of you there, right? If you would look at page 5-7. So I have sort of a fundamental question, and I apologize in advance, because I'm sure I'm just being dense about all this, but the very first column there says $573 million at the bottom. And that coincides with the budget numbers that we have in this 40-page line-by-line budget. Two columns over, there's a $32.45 million figure for capital improvements. So am I correct that the city in fiscal year 20 is planning to spend $573 million on everything in column 1, plus spend another $32 million in everything that's in column 3?
This is the budget, so we do budget for this amount. We don't know, and we're not 100% sure if that's going to be spent.
Okay, all right, fair enough. We don't know if we're going to actually spend it, but that's what we're...
Right.
Okay. Now, looking at the column in between those two, 130, that sums up 130 million. I'm not even clear where that money comes from, whether that's grant money and other monies, but do I understand that in addition to spending the $573 million in column 1 and the $32 million in column 3, the expectation is not that we would spend every penny of it, but we're budgeting for another $130 million worth of expenses?
I can get back to you later on this detail. I have to look in the back and see what that combines.
So you're not clear if that 130 million is in addition to the 573 or is somehow included within it?
I don't have an answer.
Madam President?
Just want to jump in here and make
Yeah, go
sure
ahead.
I'm following, and I think I understand. On 5.7, right, in the first column where it says fund total, that's the total general fund spend. And then on the preceding columns, that's what we're spending in departmental revenue, capital improvement,
That is correct.
education funds, but it's all a part of that total aggregate of the 573. Or those are additional expenses. Those are additional line
These
item
are-
expenses.
Those are additional. And
Right,
they
for the
break-
total 880, for the total 880.
That is correct.
So is
So
that
this
answer
is-
your question?
So 573 million, it's a general fund expenses. CIP, it's 32 million, and then 130 million, like I said, I can get back to you what that exactly combines.
The breakdown of those
Right,
funds. That's
exactly.
what the follow-up is.
Right.
Because you want a breakdown of what those other
I don't
municipal
have an
funds
answer right
are.
now.
Yeah, no, and I have to say, I mean, it's just sort of, you know, some of this is just sort of semantics. You know, one could look at this and one could say that the budget of the city of Hartford, not including, the budget of the city of Hartford, including sending $284 million to the Board of Education, is the sum total of those three columns, which is more like $730 million as opposed to 573. I mean, it certainly looks as though we indeed are planning to spend most of another 130 million and 32 million in columns 2 and 3.
I can answer any questions related to general fund, what's related to 573 million.
Yep.
That's what the general fund expenditure is, and for that particular column, I can get back to you with the details.
Okay, thank you.
Any of my colleagues have any questions? Seeing none? Madam Minority Leader?
Thank you. So you mentioned in the beginning that the selection process for the CIP funds is determined by, there's a process through the different departments in terms of the selection for the actual CIP.
Yes. Yeah, around January, we send out a communication to each one of the departments with a packet that includes our guidelines for the planning process for CIP. They're given the month to create proposals for each project that they'd wish to have included in the CIP, including what we went over here today in those guidelines. We ask that they rank order those projects. Then we meet with and engage each of the departments to discuss each one of the projects. That gives us an opportunity to ask them about the financing portions of the projects, how the projects break down into their separate phases, or any reimbursements that they anticipate on those projects. And then using their priorities, their input, we put together a recommended CIP, which then gets reviewed by the mayor's office, planning and zoning, and then here by you.
Okay. So the follow-up question is, there have been pedestrian walk and bike audits that have been done in conjunction with nonprofit agencies, one of them being the Center for Latino Progress. And so I'm not seeing that data that they've collected incorporated into, for instance, page 33-42 that has to do with bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements. And so I'm not seeing the alignment and was concerned about that.
Okay. For that particular project, I can reach out to the project manager and ask them about their efforts in collaborating with that group, and then we can certainly look at modifying that project description accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President?
So I just want to make sure I understand, and I apologize if you answered this question earlier because I had to step out. But as of right now, we're projecting 95% reimbursement for Weaver and MLK, and we're not sure what the city's contribution is going to be, and that's is going to be happening in some determinations with the state over the next few months or whatever, as they, figure out what that may look like, or towards the end of the project or construction project. I just want to make sure I understand where we are in the process.
Absolutely. So for Weaver High School, we have achieved that 95% reimbursement rate, and we are planning to that 95%.
That's solid.
That has happened.
We can check that.
Correct.
So we know clearly where we are.
For MLK, right now, we are planning under the assumption of an 80% reimbursement rate to protect ourselves in the event that we do not achieve that 95% reimbursement rate. The legislative session upcoming in June, we will find out whether or not we've been able to successfully achieve the 95%. We are being continually reassured that that 95% will come through, but I personally am not planning for it until it happens.
Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Human Resources.
That pizza wasn't. Okay, good evening, Ms. Sherry and team. Again, you have the floor. You have time to do your presentation, and then I know we sent some advanced questions, so you can run right into those if you're prepared to answer those, and then we'll open it up for additional questions. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to come to present the HR budget for the 1920 fiscal year. With me this evening is Rich Pekorski, who is our HR Administrator for Benefits, and Janine Fair, who's our HR Administrator for HR Services and Technology. And also, Nellie, my Executive Assistant, is here, and Latoya Wells, who is our new Assistant Director for HR and Labor. So I'll start off by just reminding you of our mission, which has been the same over the last few years. And it's to provide effective guidance and support. I'm going to look down here, sorry. To city departments, and this is in respect to managing employees and hiring new employees, and also to provide fair, consistent, and clear standards that would be applied citywide, to provide direct services in the following HR areas: compensation, classification, benefits, employee relations, labor relations, training, development, and recruitment, and also to serve as a resource for the city on matters involving collective bargaining agreements and state and federal employment law. And the next slide is a snapshot of what our department looks like. So there's the Director of HR, an Executive Assistant, and we have 3 different areas or divisions, if you will, within the department. One is Employment Services, which includes all of the daily HR interaction with employees and managers in the city. And under that division is an assistant director and a number of analysts, and we do have 1 labor person in that division. We also have, within Employment Services, technology and HR services. And again, that's Janine Fair and another analyst. And under our Benefits Administration is Rich Pekorski and 2 other employees. And we also have a part-time labor contracts person who is responsible for all of the negotiations with the labor unions and the management of the contracts. So we have a total of 13 full-time employees. The next few slides are what we call the highlights, and they're broken down by each division. So the first set of highlights are from the Employment Services Division. So you'll see a lot of recruitment in this area. So I'll go through it quickly for you because I know that you've already seen some of this information in fire and police. So we had so here's what we wanted to highlight. A total of 93 employees were eligible for promotional opportunities in the fire department. The fire department held 2 classes this fiscal year, and we onboarded 42 new firefighter recruits. In the police department, there were a total of 34 employees who were eligible for promotional opportunities. The police department will have held 3 classes this year. We've already had 2, and we're almost at the end of recruiting for the 3rd class. And I know you asked this question last night. They did hire 7 cadets in September, and I believe they will be hiring. They have a total amount budgeted of 15, so they have a list to hire more. In emergency services and telecommunications, we're proud to say that we identified a need where people were, or applicants were not passing a certain component of the test, and it was typing. So we tried to be creative, and we found a resource to provide typing lessons. And so we're hoping that with giving them that extra support, we'll see that more people are passing so that they can be eligible for the positions. We also worked in collaboration with labor to create a per diem emergency telecommunications dispatcher position, and this is to support recruitment efforts and staffing because we were sometimes not staffed appropriately, so we needed to have another way to find people who were trained to cover the dispatch center. In Public Works, we actually created a training program so that we could get our current employees eligible for the maintainer 4 position, and we did hire from within. Instead of going outside, we hired 4 people into that position. So that was a promotional opportunity for DPW. Continuing on to more employment services, this is in the area of technology and HR services. So we trained our HR staff on the Munis system, which is our HRIS system. The reason why this is important is, for example, when you ask for data, we need to be able to run reports and pull data, and we need to use our system. So we've been looking at how we use data, how we use our Munis system, and we've been working directly with Tyler, who is the vendor, to train our staff. We also trained our analysts on the progressive discipline process. Our analysts, over the years, have really focused on recruiting. They did a lot of job posting, verifying applications, and hiring. But we didn't really focus on building their capacity to support the city. And so what we were attempting to do and are attempting to do is give them the tools in HR so that they can do more for the departments. So we train them on how to identify and support the managers in the progressive discipline process for employees. We provided training to over 600 employees in the city in EEOC areas, ADA, and Connecticut Relay. In an effort to be more inclusive in our hiring practices, we updated the employment application and our HRIS system to reflect additional gender options. So what that looks like is male, female, and then we added another category, and that's something that we wanted to do to be inclusive. We offered financial literacy lunch and learns for employees, and we also created an online registration. So as we were creating these opportunities for people to participate in lunch and learns, we wanted to track who attended the lunch and learns. So we used the Munis system, and our technology services department was able to register everyone through the system. So we can now run a report, and we can see who attended which lunch and learn, what lunch and learns were provided, and so forth. So that's a really good move for us as well. And we're continuing to revise and streamline our EEO complaint procedures. In the area of labor relations, we received the HMIA Interest Arbitration Award. We successfully negotiated with the Municipal Lawyers Association, and we also executed and successfully negotiated the school crossing guards contract. Within benefits, we completed the Secova audit, saving a projected amount to the city of $491,000. And to boost morale, we ran a weight loss team challenge to improve employee health, promote team building, and improve morale. And we lost a total of 500 pounds. So that was exciting. So the next page is in regards to our strategic initiatives for the upcoming year. And these are goals that we aspire to, and some of these things we're already doing, so we just want to enhance the work that we're doing currently. So in regards to recruitment, we do partner with the departments, and we are prioritizing the hiring of Hartford residents, particularly within the public safety positions. In benefits, we are continuing to transition the last groups who are not yet in the high deductible health plan. We'll be transitioning those groups as well in the upcoming year. We are identifying programs and policies that are created to benefit employees, and we want to promote and raise awareness to such programs and policies. And so an example of this would be tuition reimbursement or EAP programs. So sometimes people don't know that they have access to tuition reimbursement. We have the EAP program, which is the Employee Assistance Program. People usually think that EAP programs are just for issues such as counseling, alcohol, and so forth, but there are many other reasons why we can promote EAP programs. They do offer stress management seminars, health seminars, legal support, budget and debt and financial wellness, and also child and elder care support to employees. So we want to promote these programs to help build morale. In the area of employee engagement, we are going to continue to support and expand employee recognition programs, provide mandated and optional training opportunities to city employees, and continue to automate our HR systems to reduce administrative burden and increase organizational effectiveness. And what that means is we are continuing to use technology to support the workforce. And this is the reason we have identified the need for the HR technology and services area. And again, this is about reporting, about using the system for training, for enrolling people into training and so forth. So that's what that is. And lastly, in employee engagement, we would like to continue to expand the city's communication strategy, or really, have a communication strategy that would keep employees informed and engaged. And so some solid examples of that would be the use of the HR Beat, which is the employee newsletter, where we do put a lot of information that employees, hopefully they're happy to have. And we also are hoping to have a documented menu of training and lunch and learn options that will promote professional and personal growth. So we do have data on that. We've offered a lot of lunch and learns this year. And so if you wanted to see what that looked like, we could share that data with you. And in HR operations, we want to continue to update policies and department procedures. In regards to the budget this year, the FY20 staffing remains flat compared to last year. And nearly 40% of the department's budget is allocated for recruitment and testing, which is a big part of a budget, and that's due to police and fire. And on our last page are the areas that we will continue to focus on. And the first one is supporting the recruitment of Hartford residents where possible, as well as diverse candidates and the subsequent retention and advancement of city employees. We anticipate that contract negotiations for fire and HPA will begin this year as their contracts expire in June. We'll continue to engage employees by offering training options such as EEOC training programs, ADA and Connecticut relay training, and we will offer other training programs as determined. We will continue to explore recognition program options and recognize employees for their contributions, continue to streamline the EEO process, policies and procedures, and support and expand current diversity and inclusion initiatives. And that's the end of the presentation. So I have a number of questions, so I can just start reading through them. So the first question is, how many vacancies do we plan to fill in the fiscal year? Please provide a list of all non-fire or police vacancies you plan to fill. So the recommended budget contains 70 vacant positions, excluding fire and police. And we actually do have a list which will be provided to you at the end. Number two, how many new positions are we creating? And please provide a list. And again, a list will be provided. The recommended budget contains 23 new positions. The new positions are offset by reduced a few positions to be able to fill these positions, and so there were 6 vacant positions, including an administrative position in Corp Counsel, 1 administrative position in the town clerk's office, 2 police parking controllers, and 2 development services housing code inspectors. And so we were able to fund those positions. Number 3, are there any raises represented in the budget for union and non-union employees? So Local 1716, they are scheduled for a 2% increase on July 2019. The Lawyers Association is also scheduled for a 2% increase, and non-union employees, for all employees who have been employed for a minimum of 4 years pending the Court of Common Council's approval, they also will receive a 2% increase. Number 4, what is the breakdown of employees making 6 figures? How many employees are getting less than 50K, and how many are between 50K and 99K? So we have a total of 331 employees who are less than 50K, a total of 1,012 employees between 50 to 99, and a total of 69 employees over 6 figures. And I do have the average salary, but I didn't do it. I didn't do the average salary. I actually did the average salary within those ranges. So within the range for 6 figures, the average salary is $121,557. The average salary within the range of 50 to 99 is $72,150, and the average salary less than 50K is $35,884. I do have more data than that can be shared. Number 5, what is the average age of an employee? And the average age of an employee is 42. Number 6, how many managerial supervisory staff do we have in the city? And that number is 289, and Councilman Clark stepped out, but last year he wanted to know the demographics, and we couldn't find that information, so we have it this year. And 138 of the 289 are non-white, so 48% of our supervisors. Of all the new hires this fiscal year, what percentage were Hartford residents? 39%. So 61 out of 155 were Hartford residents. How many promotions were made?
I'm sorry. How many new positions were there? 155 was the total number?
New hires?
I'm sorry.
155.
155.
Yes.
And so of that, 39%, 61 were
Yes.
Hartford
I gave
residents.
61, 39%. How many promotions were made? Of those promotions, how many were Hartford residents? 100 promotions were made, and this is the time frame between April 1 and March 31st of 2019. That's our data point. 29 of them were Hartford residents.
29 of the 100.
Yes. Number 9, what is our performance management approach? How does HR work with departments to ensure we are consistent across the board? So performance management, it has been a tool that we used with growth increments throughout the years. One union contract, which is HMIA, actually has a performance evaluation tool, so the supervisors have to do an annual evaluation for HMIA employees. And then MLA actually has an evaluation tool as well. The non-union employees, there is a form, and in recent years, we have not been using the form because growth increments had been suspended. However, our next steps have been the discussion about the importance of performance management, and we've identified this as a priority area. We're actually exploring how to use our current system to house the HMIA and the MLA performance management tools so we can track them electronically, and we have to determine how to move forward with the non-union employees and their performance management. Any other performance management tools for other unions will have to be negotiated. So that would be any other union outside of HMIA, MLA. We would have to negotiate performance management. Number 10, when is the last time HR conducted a citywide culture and climate survey? So to the best of our knowledge, this has not happened in the city, and this knowledge goes back to 2004, because that's as far back as the staff can remember. So if anything happened before 2004, I don't have that data. What is the dollar value of the investment we're putting towards career development? So at this time, we don't have a dollar amount or funds to create a budget for career development because we don't have that money set aside. However, there is a budget set aside for training. And through that training budget, we will have the ability to offer a variety of training opportunities for employees. And as I said, this fiscal year, we offered training sessions, and these sessions were in classroom settings, online, and through lunch and learns. And we provided training to over 600 employees. So our goal is to expand the city's training options and create a list of options for employees to, choose from. Also, as a member of CCM, which is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, we have access to free training sessions, so we'll compile a calendar from that and promote that to the employees so that they can also have training there. They usually have customer service training, accounting training, and a suite of training that we can choose from. And lastly, as I stated before, the tuition reimbursement is also a benefit that can promote professional growth with employees can go to school. So we will continue to promote that, and these are all avenues for career development. Ideally, we would love to put money aside for it. What is the one thing you wish was in the budget and is not? And so my answer to that is 2 additional full-time employees for the HR department, 1 dedicated to training and 1 dedicated to employment services and labor. What policy recommendations do you have for council that could help you do your job more effectively? For the purposes of tonight, again, I'm promoting tuition reimbursement, so reviewing and revising the tuition reimbursement policy to increase the reimbursement amount so that employees have a greater benefit. And think it will go far, and the employees will greatly appreciate that benefit. And it will help us do a job more effectively when the employees are happy. So, how many retired or former city employees are now contracting with the city? Please list names and positions. So I need more time to give you the information for this particular question. We are having an issue pulling the reports because we cannot pull one report from the system. We have to pull a number of reports. We have to pull a report from pension. We have to pull a report from our HR system. And so, again, this lady next to me is working on creating reports and technology so we can have this information at our fingertips. So over the next few weeks, we have to manually build this report. And so we will answer this question. We do have some clarifying questions for you, especially in regards to the former employees. So we will ask those questions and then we will provide the information at a later date. Number 15, how many full-time non-school employees no longer receive medical insurance for their dependents? And the answer to this is, let me just read this. So 51 dependents were voluntarily dropped by themselves. 26 dependents were canceled, and 5 were reinstated. So I don't know what the total is.
Approximately 19 to 20 that were canceled.
So approximately 19 to 20 were canceled. Number 16, how many full-time employees no longer receive medical insurance for their dependents? Is that the same question? Oh, this is for the, I'm sorry, this was for the Board of Ed. We can't answer the Board of Ed question, so that we don't have an answer for that. Number 17, the company used by the school board to retrieve status on employees with dependents is called Socova. Are they still being used by the city of Hartford? How many mistakes has been made since using this company? So we engaged Socova, and that process ended on December 31st of 2018. I'm not aware of any mistakes that they've made in regards to us. Number 18, on page 18-4, according to the program services chart, it says we are in accordance with the legal mandate of providing grievance hearings. What is the legal mandate for this? As on the following page, I see we are only projected to resolve 20 of the 45 grievances filed this year. Are these two connected? So I'm going to break this question down into 2 sections. The first section is the legal mandate. So when it comes to grievance hearings. So the legal mandate when it comes to grievance hearings. So pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 7-470, we as a city are prohibited from refusing to bargain collectively with unions. We're prohibited to refuse to discuss grievances, and we're prohibited to refuse to comply. So basically, we have to bargain, we have to discuss, and we have to comply. So that's the legal compliance. So as union reps, individuals have a right to file a grievance. As an employer, we have a legal obligation to bargain, discuss, and to comply. So that takes care of the legal mandate. Now there are contractual mandates, which now limits you to timelines, how you respond, when you respond. And those are not legal mandates, but I'm mentioning them because they are mandates. And so we have to follow them based on the collective bargaining agreement. So that answers the first part. The second part of the question was, we are projected to resolve 20 of the 45 grievances filed this year, and are these two connected? And the answer is they're not connected, but I'll just kind of talk through where we are with resolving grievances. So in the past, we sometimes resolved grievances much faster, or it looked like it was faster. We had less grievances, and that's because now we're in a place where we've done some contract negotiations. People are not happy with some of the things that are in the contracts. Grievances are higher. And so we're in a different place than where we were a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. In a year from now, we might be resolving grievances at a faster rate. You know, we may have more staff. We will have less contract issues. So it really depends on the climate at the time. And so this year you see that we've projected that we would resolve 20 of the 45 grievances. because we don't have the staff to resolve grievances fast enough, and the grievances are coming in really fast, and they're plenty. A lot of grievances are in abeyance, meaning that we've agreed that we would extend the timeline so we can have more time to come to a resolution. So it's just a point in time that a lot of different things are happening, and that's why we're not resolving as quickly. And we hope to get back to a place where we can resolve them at a faster level. So I hope that answers the question. It should answer the question. That was a very difficult question to answer and to explain, so. Subsequently, where are we with ensuring the legal mandate around training is fulfilled? So there are, believe it or not, no other trainings required by law for municipalities other than a one-time sexual harassment training for supervisors. So that's the legal mandate. But again, as I demonstrated tonight, and as you will see, we are committed to going above and beyond the law. And so you will find that we will offer more trainings than just a one-time sexual harassment training for supervisors. And the last question, what support do you need to ensure that the legal mandate for health and wellness service is fulfilled? So our consultants, Siegel, they have a benefits compliance team, and they review plans and designs and wellness programs to ensure that employers comply with ACA mandates pertaining to minimum levels of health coverage and affordability. So that's how we comply with that. And that was the last question.
Thank you, and thank you for your responses, and thank you for the work that you've been doing to boost employee morale and really kind of make some structural changes within the department. So first, a compliment. I do like how we're highlighting the new employees in our newsletter. I think that's a really good addition, so folks know, who's coming on board, particularly in key positions. But I have a couple of questions. So given that we haven't, in recent history or over a decade, had some type of climate and culture survey, I'm wondering, what, in your experience, because I know you're new to the city but have worked in other places and are familiar with this, I'm just trying to gauge, in your perspective, like how much money are we talking about to do something like that? Like, I think there's like the low end where, there's some off-the-shelf type of survey you can implement department by department, because I do think it's important to do it department by department so we can really understand, where the gaps are and where the issues are, if you will, and make improvement. But I'm just trying to gauge from you, like, how much does something like that cost? What would that look like to implement and do?
So the cost, I think, can run anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. In my experience, in two different places, one was an employer of 693 employees, and one was an employer of 2,000. So that was the range. So John Byrne and I were talking about this earlier today in regards to employee climate surveys, and we have to be careful when we do surveys, because if you do a survey and you get data, you have to be prepared to act on the data. And you have to be prepared to listen to the data. So we would want to engage a firm that would be able to work with us so that we can develop specific areas that we would want to survey about and not just do a survey,
Right. Yeah.
And I would say you would have to do that over time, year over year, to see how the data changes. So this year we would do it, and then next year see what happens.
Right.
And so one of my suggestions is, if we didn't have the funds immediately to start a survey, is you do it with new hires. And so you can start off by, and this is something I actually did in Norwalk, you start off by disseminating a survey to new hires about their experience with recruitment, the first year, and then the next year you do that with the next set of new hires. And after a period of time, you have 2 or 3 years of data that can drive your onboarding programs, that can drive your first year programs, and you can start making change within the city. And you can do that without a consultant because you're getting data about onboarding programs. And then after that, you can engage someone to do a full survey, and you would pay the cost of that.
So I understand everything you said. So I guess I'm just questioning and wondering if, again, because I do think this is department by department. I do think there's value in kind of understanding on a baseline perspective, like where you are, right, as respect to morale. And then that's a year over year, that's a part of what you do. That's a part of how you operate as an organization. And so there's an expectation that, we're gonna listen to people. We wanna know like how you enjoy or don't enjoy working at the city of Hartford and what we can do to continuously improve that experience, whatever it may be. And I think it is about how you structure the questions and what information you're trying to glean. But I do think that it's value in doing a survey for our current workforce of people who have been there for however long, on some initial kind of like a baseline, not getting too like granular survey. Just to get a gauge and a temperature, because I just think that we're experiencing, this has been a tough couple years for the city in different, departments. And, we had a budget hearing and, we had some employees come out from departments that are talking about, their morale and how they're treated. And I think we need to be responsible in understanding what they feel and how we can respond. There's extreme, aspects of both sides of the coin, but I think there's like a middle ground where we can at least have a gauge and sense of where people are and how they're feeling and how we can improve year over year. And that's something that we do annually, but I do think it should be by department, because it's specific to those departments and the culture within those departments. So I would just kind of leave that with you. We can talk about it further offline for food for thought, but I do think that's something important that we really need where we are, and considering we haven't done it in recent or long history in our city.
Right.
So that's something that I think is a priority, and should be a priority.
And so to answer your question, it would be 15 to 24,000 is what I would probably think we would need to put away for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question I have is around leadership and how we are cultivating our pipeline of leaders, specifically Hartford residents, and ensuring that they have opportunities to rise in supervisory management levels. And I know like the state has this program that they implement in some departments. I don't know if it's in all departments, but it's sort of like, it's a position, but it's like, a leadership position. Like if you have a certain baseline set of skills, right, you can, for example, work in OPM as like a budget analyst or some, or the step just before the budget analyst or whatever, to really like learn the apparatus of the organization or whatever. But the whole sole purpose of that position is to train you to be an emerging leader, right? So I'm just wondering, is that something that, you're open to, that we can consider like implementing in the city?
Right. I mean, we're open to anything that will promote growth and opportunities for staff. I know that we have talked a lot about different programs. Some of the programs we talk about will cost money, and some things that we would want to do might have to be negotiated, again, because if you're creating new jobs and new opportunities and new financial opportunities for staff who are in unions, you would have to negotiate that. But we would visit any program that you suggest because it's something that we are dedicated to. I know that Thea's also talked about promotional and growth opportunities. So one thing that I will tell you is that we are extremely short-staffed. And so because of that, we are not able to do anything that is innovative or creative. But, you know, the talent is there, the ideas are there, and, you know, we would love to do some of that. I would love to visit programs and take whatever you have so we can look at certain things. I know UConn, actually, they have a training program for their employees, and that's something that I wanted to visit as well to see if we can participate with them, so. But until we can, you know, I don't mean to sound like, you know, the way that I sound, but until we can actually have more support, we won't be able to do, and support as in physical support and financial support. But we all would love to move forward and do things like this. We can certainly have discussions and come up with framework and so forth, but then we won't be able to do anything until.
Right, and I guess, you know, we can talk about this more offline, but I think it's not a matter of new money, it's a matter of being creative with the positions that we currently have and how we are operating within those positions. So, like, I just want to be clear about that. This isn't new money, this is about, again, being creative and innovative with what we have.
Right.
Any other questions? Councilman Clark.
Thank you, through you, Madam President. One suggestion I would have, Ms. Sherry, the city used to have the Middle Management Institute training, which I was fortunate enough to take after I left the city. And so I would suggest looking into that and reinstituting that for those that aspire to be middle managers across the board, whether it's in DPW or whatever department, so that they can get those skills sharpened, and so that can prepare them for various promotions when that becomes available. So we can look for hiring internally versus externally.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that cost would be, but I'm quite sure we can get some of our corporate partners to help us out.
Councilman Deutsch.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask two questions, but also of my colleagues. I think it may take a lot of us to answer. When I spoke to our internal auditor just the other day about the claims, the volume of claims in the former style of health insurance, and then these newer high-deductible health plans and HSAs, it looked from the numbers, unless somehow we're misinterpreting, that we need an explanation for a curve like this, where in a fiscal year, it looks as if some of the claims jump up in May and June with the new high-deductible health plans. I mean, I could well be wrong, but I wonder if anyone from their experience or common sense can suggest a reason that there is an increase in the claims at the end of the fiscal year, like May and June. He and some of us can come up with the possibility, but I wonder if anyone else can think why. I mean, it's not mosquitoes or something else like that. Does anyone have any suggestions, including, of course, from the HR staff?
I'm not, Councilman, I'm not quite sure what fiscal year you're looking at, but if there are a spike in claims in April, May, and June, It's probably due to the fact that people are getting their services done prior to going to a high deductible health plan. And that's sort of normal for an entity that's moving to a high deductible, that people are going to utilize under a PPO as much as they can and their family members can before they have to pay out of pocket for the next fiscal year.
But might I add?
But the point of that, wait, let me answer that.
Wait, I just want to interject there because you have to understand this. With a high deductible health plan too, there are HSAs and HRAs. And with the HRAs, you can't carry that over to the next fiscal year with a lot of the plans. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the health reimbursement account, which you're referring to, Councilman, is for certain people who can't participate in the HSA by a law from the IRS. You can't have a bank account, such as if they carry a Medicare Part A and they may be working, they can't. So an HRA is something that we front, the city fronts, instead of depositing the money into an account, we actually credit them, so when they get services at the time of point of service, they don't pay the first $1,000 or $2,000. The city picks it up. They carry the next $1,000 or $2,000. It's the same theory, same principle, except they can't have a bank account.
Yeah. But maybe it wasn't clear to members of the council. This compared a couple of fiscal years where they already had a high deductible health plan. So it wasn't solely, it doesn't seem like it was solely the switch from the traditional where they wanted to get things into the high deductible at the end of it. So there's another hypothesis as to why there would be a jump in claims under a couple years of high deductible health plans.
Well, that must be the last fiscal year, and I think you had police in HPA going into the high deductible that particular year. So you may have had a spike that particular time, because that's not this current fiscal year.
That's right.
It's not. So that might have been when the police in HPA were going into the high deductible health plan, because the year prior, fire went into the high deductible health plan, and they were the only group. So if you're looking at spikes in claims, I can tell you right now that the fire claims have gone down almost 6% from last year to this year, and police under the HDHP were flat. They were 0.3% increase in their rates. So they are underwritten on their own, but you can see that their claims have actually decreased or remained flat. So, you know, I'm not quite sure of that chart, though.
Well, the other point, though, is in total, the total claims and expense to the city, which is self-assured, whether that rose or fell. In other words, if you compare the overall cost, let's say over several years, for the traditional insurance and the claims paid by our self-insured city to the overall payments under high deductible health plans, another possibility, and I would say to the council, is there really a savings? Or the way in the strategic initiative slide, it says, we will continue to monitor the cost savings of the new plan. And the question was whether there is a cost savings, or because of the high deductible structure, the city is actually paying more. And so the question was, which I've asked the mayor, you know, who makes the policy, whether the city is really saving money on having a high deductible health plan when you look comprehensively. Because after the deductible is paid out, am I correct, during, let's say it's paid in January, February, and March, then there's very little constraint on getting operations and elective surgery under high deductible. Am I right? Once it's paid, then there's little limitation in the claims and what the city has to pay for them. So don't we have to look in a comprehensive way at the totality of expense to the city? And we can't quantify pain and suffering if something is delayed because of high deductible, but we might be able to quantify complications because something was postponed. I'm making that point largely for City Council because there is a solid body of evidence that the high deductible health plans do not necessarily benefit a city economically, a municipality, which is why I'm making that point now, and I've done it before, and I'll have to do it with Corp Counsel. Why
So do you
there's-
have a question
Yes.
for
Yeah, I just
the
asked a
panel,
question,
please?
Council President. I just asked a question. Perhaps we need to analyze the data a little further in coming years, not to burden those who maybe haven't been here that long, to see, is the city, to answer this question on the handout, is the city really saving money, or is it spending more money when you put the whole picture together with the high deductibles? And if anyone can show research that really compares apples to apples, so to speak, over years, then we would love to see that research that proves it. And I asked that question in a question to the mayor just recently. And so we don't have all the answers, and anyone who does, I would love to have them. I have just one other question, which is...
One more question.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. The question is this. I don't know whether I should have been surprised, but I haven't heard before recently of Secova. Has anyone else on the council heard of the Secova company and the audits? You have. Anyone else?
Are you directing your questions to
I'm directing it to everyone to
the
make
panel?
to illustrate. Excuse me. I'm directing questions to everyone because we have to find out the conditions under which we outsource, which we mentioned earlier in this session. And I don't know why yet that some of us have not heard of Secova as a source of auditing and information. So maybe someone can tell us that.
Well, I'm sorry, Councilman Deutsch, do you carry health insurance through the city? Do you carry health insurance through the city?
Certainly.
Okay, are you a single person? Do you have somebody else on your plan?
Not as a dependent now, no.
Okay, so the reason you probably didn't hear of it because you never received a package for an audit because you are an independent one-person plan. This was a verification for dependents. That's perhaps why you didn't know about it, because a package or a letter or correspondence wasn't sent to you.
But my question again for all of us, did we have to approve any outsourced contract for auditing or something like we annually approve the auditing?
That was a management decision and under their jurisdiction.
But don't we have to approve contracts, like, for instance, our auditors that developed the financial plan and audited it? Council had to approve.
I'd like to make a suggestion that this is a question that should be answered by Corp Counsel, and we can get that information for you.
And yes, we do approve contracts over a certain threshold. So if it's below a certain threshold, it's not going to come to council.
Granted. So in any case, the question stands, and we can wait till Corp Counsel. I didn't mean to inject it this late at this time. We will ask the Corp Counsel, which I did already, but he's not as swift in responding. But we'll get it, I'm sure, next week.
Thank you. Other questions? Minority Leader.
Thank you. As part of your presentation, did you mention the number in terms of how many non-union unclassified employees we have?
No, but I can give you that number. Actually, non-union unclassified employees. No, we did not pull that for the presentation.
Okay.
But that's not a hard information to pull. We can pull that.
Okay.
So your question is how many non-union unclassified employees the
Yes.
city? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Full-time.
Yep.
Right.
Full-time. Yep. And then I noticed that, I noted that when you were reading it was a lengthy number of questions that we had for you.
Right.
But I didn't recall the number, the exact number, but it had to do with retirees.
Yep, 14.
14. And so you were going to get that information back to us.
Yes, because I do have to ask a clarifying question about that because we're using the words contractors and, so I need to ensure that that's what you're looking for, and then retired versus former.
Mm-hmm. As part of that question number 14, can you also include the pay scale in terms of whether or not once they return, if they're actually making more after having retired and then returning back to the city? That would be helpful.
Okay.
In reference to the citywide culture survey, which I'm in complete agreement with Council President and others, that we should have that survey. You mentioned that a good way to roll it out would be at the onset when we have new employees coming in. I'm wondering if there's ever been a flip, which is as employees are leaving, because once they leave, they have that institutional knowledge and they certainly know a lot more about the city at that point.
Yeah. I think we have had an exit interview process, but we have not used it in the recent years.
Is that standard across the board to have an exit interview process?
You mean here or?
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if it's for specific departments that they have an exit interview process, or if it's for all departments of the city of Hartford.
No, I don't think we have. I don't think we're doing exit interviews at all.
How can we make that so that it is a policy?
We have to just implement it.
Okay.
It's not hard to implement. I don't think you need an outside company to implement exit interviews. I think that after a while, it's good to get an outside consultant, only because as we're taking the information, we become more biased in our practices. So it's better to be detached from the information and have an outside company conduct them after it's set up.
Okay.
So that's just my experience.
Okay. So, but
it can be easily implemented.
And so then you would draft that policy. The HR department would draft that policy in conjunction with Corp Counsel.
Right. I don't think there would need to be a policy, but that's something I can look into, whether it's a policy or just a procedure, or you just update something and start asking questions when employees leave.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think
we can look into that.
Thank you. In your presentation, you mentioned Munis trainings for your employees. I'm wondering if that's also extended to other employees outside of HR, and is that so?
It is. Do you want to talk to it? So we do have in every department a contact who does the HR functions for that department. So those persons are also trained in Munis, and we have been training them as well to use the system. They're called time entry, right? Time entry, the timekeepers. So those employees are also trained in Munis. They are the only so Munis. So there will be the time entry and personal administration of Munis. And there are certain people who are trained in that. And then as an employee, we do have Munis training for employees, and that's in the form of employee self-service. So as an employee who's not an administrator, you can go in and enroll yourself in training and so forth, and that's also training for Munis, for employees. Does that make sense? So there are two different levels.
It does make sense. But if we wanted to have an employee access information in Munis specifically related to, say, how much we've spent on travel, for instance, in city council. Not that we do, but but as an example. So can we then request that through that type of training? No. I'm seeing a no in the back. No.
So a training for something like that will actually go through, I believe, finance with Leanne's team, but we can post it through employee self-service, through HR, so that employees can register for that training.
Okay. And then reimbursement rates. What is the percent that we're doing reimbursement rates for tuition right now?
It's a flat amount of $350 per class, which is really low. And the most that it's been is $500 per class. And it's based on what's put aside in the budget and then divided by the amount of people who are taking a class. And that determines the amount of the reimbursement.
Okay, so a flat rate of tuition reimbursement of $350, maybe possibly 500 max?
The maximum has been 500,
Okay.
which isn't a lot because that's not even one credit, I think,
Yeah,
is like
not even-
$800.
Yeah, it's not enough. Have there ever been, so when you were mentioning the absolute mandated training, which is only one, has there ever been any trainings related to racial equity?
I would have to find out. I don't know.
Okay.
But I know in PD they've had some sensitivity training, which kind of leads to that. And I think that's something that we would like to have across the city as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it would.
you're right. And the sensitivity training for PD, that part is mandated because, is that correct?
I don't know if it's mandated, but
No,
I know
it's
they
not.
do it.
Okay.
I don't know if we can find out if it's mandated.
Okay. The last question. So when you mentioned the collective bargaining agreements and specifically the grievance process for the unions, depending on the union contract is the way that the grievance process could be carried.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good evening, y'all.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
So, one, thank you for the work that you do. So I just have a quick question. And actually listening to this presentation, it created a larger picture for me about how understaffed you are and how quickly the sugar honey iced tea can hit the fan and how hard it is to like come back from that, right? And so my question is just around the process when a city employee sends an email to someone in HR around looking for information about their pay stubs, looking for information about, checking in to see how much time off they have or the time off accrual or anything like that. What typically is the process? Like when HR receives that email, what process does it go through in order for that person to then receive a response?
So the way that the department is currently structured, there are analysts who are assigned to specific departments. So if I work for DDS, I would call my analyst directly, and that analyst would be responsible for responding to the employees. In addition, we do have an HR email, which I think we check that at least 2 or 3 times a day. And if there is a question that's specific to a department, it's sent to the analyst. So in short, the analyst should be responding to the employee in the department that they are responsible for. What people may be experiencing is that we don't have any analysts. So our analysts are leaving. We hired an analyst in October and he left last month. And when he left, then we had to shift his department to someone else. And we just had another resignation this week. So we actually have 1 full-time analyst when we had 3. And we have a temp who's an analyst right now. So that is the reason that you would feel a delay. If we're fully staffed and people are servicing their departments, there would be an expectation that they would be responding immediately.
Thank you. What does it look like for you to be fully staffed? So you said you have 13 people on staff right now. What's the ideal full staff?
Well, we have 13 budgeted positions. Right. So it's not fully staffed, right? So we will have 2 openings. So we will be at 11 employees, and we have 2 openings that would need to be filled. And to be ideally right now, we would like a couple more full-time employees. We have room for them to do things to help us, so.
The Majority Leader.
2 questions. How much does a part-time employee gets paid hourly?
I'm sorry.
part-time employee, what do they make an hour?
It depends. It's calculated based on the part-time employee's hourly rate. Right, it's based on calculated based on the full-time position and broken down to an hourly.
In your department? In HR?
It would vary, so maybe, if we have a HR technician or a clerk, their salary is about $41,000 a year, and then hourly, I'm not sure what that is, about 22.
That's for a part-time employee?
No, that's I don't have part-time employees.
Okay.
So a part-time employee in my department, what they make, so it depends, right? So we have part-time employees who have supported us in our departments, and that their salaries are based on their previous salaries and the hourly rate based on the previous salary that they were in.
Okay, can you give me that figure?
Yes.
And then the second question is, how much would it require in dollar amount to hire 2 full-time employees to your department? If you can get me that figure.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we all set? Okay, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you for all the work that you are doing on behalf of our city. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So with that, that completes our second night of budget hearings. That concludes us for the week, and we will reconvene back here next Tuesday, May 7th, when we will be talking with Internal Audit, Metro Hartford Innovation Services, Development Services, and the Hartford Parking Authority. Thank you and good night.